now, from Pensacola, Florida, it's Within Reason with Bob Kerrigan and Bill Rankin.
Well, good evening, Bob Kerrigan and
Bill Rankin.
Bill Rankin. We're here Within Reason, another effort to stimulate the viewing audience in one way or another. Except we have this one emailer that's really kind of...
You're going to do that.
He's kind of bugging me a little bit,
Yeah.
okay? So this guy wants to watch a TV program that apparently used to run about the time that this show was running, wherever you're watching it. And he's not able to watch it, so the next week, way late into the program, we mentioned this person, and not by name, of course, but just to say that he, we suggested he go ahead and go to bed early or something. Now, it was kind of insulting, I guess, because we assumed it was he was somewhere between 90 and 100. But he wrote back and said, no, he's not old at all. He just likes this TV show.
Yeah.
So
well, there's nothing wrong.
There's nothing wrong with that. I would just tell you that's tough luck. I mean, so I'd be polite about it. But
if I think, I haven't looked at this specific one, but if you go on Amazon.com, they have a lot of the old TV shows on DVDs. And
or Hulu,
you can watch them
Hulu TV,
yeah,
you can get them. I mean, you don't have to pay for a lot of these things.
Might be able to watch it.
You can find it somewhere else. So anyway, the point here is that we are attempting to discuss some regional, national, local issues and invite your comments and responses and your input as to what you might like us to cover. And we have a list of things we're going to talk about tonight.
And why watch us? I mean, you can go on the internet and get a bunch of news, or you can go on TV where they've got slick productions and stuff. We try to to go a little bit behind it. And what are the fundamentals here? What are the fundamental principles involved? You know, in what way is the government true to the separation of powers, the principles that started this country? I think that may be something that's kind of hard to find in other places, except maybe George Will columns or something.
Well, maybe. I think the thing that personally offended me the most was the guy said he turned the TV on, saw two old guys not talking about anything, and the two old guys is probably right.
Some of that's right, for sure.
Some of that's right. All right, now, speaking of old guys, I'm going to bring this issue up for you. Okay. Bill, we don't rehearse any of this, by the way. You say, well, yeah, you guys do. No, we don't. Bill never knows what I'm going to do. I never know what he's going to do. I can predict it, you know, because of the far right, but we don't know exactly what we're going to do. But anyway, so here's what this is my 15th solicitation from the AARP. Okay, now, what they send to me is a card with my name on it.
Yeah.
Okay, it's embossed. I mean, it's a card with my name on it and a number and everything. Okay, then they say that for $16 they'll send me, you know, some other.
You can actually be.
But now see, now what I have to do though, I have to get scissors out, and I have to cut these cards up.
Yeah.
Because if I throw them away, people can get the card, right? And it gives them an item they can use for identity theft. And so the AARP
that might be true.
Is throwing these all over. So I wrote them a letter. And I said, would you please stop doing this?
You would, yeah.
I did write them. And I said, would you please stop doing this, because I've got to just take the time to cut these cards up, and I'm getting tired of doing it. Not only did they not answer, they just keep sending me the cards.
Another one, yeah.
But now, speaking of the AARP,
yeah.
I think you have an announcement about the AARP. A little history when you first joined.
I don't like the AARP.
Yeah.
I don't like the, well, I did join,
yeah.
Many years ago, and even many years ago, I was old enough to be in the AARP, and we were going to go to a tennis resort in Vermont, and they had an AARP discount. So I joined AARP for a little while.
Now, I
didn't see what was wrong with that.
Yeah, I remember more detail, though. See, that kind of thing stuck with me, so it was just like, I'll never forget it. You joined the AARP before you were age eligible.
No, I never did that.
Oh, you did too.
I did
You
not
got
do
an
that.
early deal on it or
They
something.
send you stuff when you're 50 years old. That's a long time ago for me.
Okay, but you joined as soon as you could
No.
at age
Oh, I probably did. I mean, I
50.
joined in response to some solicitation.
But what's your current position as a charter member of the AARP? What's your current position?
I never sent him any more money after that. After I got the big discount on the resort, I didn't need him anymore, so I just never renewed anything.
So you're not a member now?
No.
But you were about to say some
First of all, I
disparaging
don't like their politics. And what they're about is, you know, they've got all kinds of stuff to sell you, which isn't necessarily any better than anybody else's. I mean, they have this, that we're the organization that represents all the older people, and we're going to sell you this Medicare supplement, or we're going to sell you this, or we're going to sell you that. It's a big commercial deal. And then a lot of times they got behind Obamacare somehow.
They've gotten behind everything that benefits senior citizens from their perspective.
Well, Obamacare doesn't.
Well, that's interesting, but because they're 100% behind Medicare.
Yeah,
100% behind Medicare.
Yeah.
But that's interesting about Obamacare.
Well, you
other
could
than,
understand it if
So
they're advocates for older people. Of course, then you'd want.
Well, and if you're between 50 and 65, you don't get Medicare.
No.
So that may be why they were behind Obamacare. You think?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sure there was some reason that benefited them.
Well, anytime you have these massive organizations that have political interests, it's a threat, isn't it? I mean, when you have this many members in a let's just say they have 3 million or 5 million or whatever it is.
Well,
that's huge.
The NRA.
The NRA is the same way.
But what would you do? I mean, people should have the right. The Sierra Club and the NRA are the same thing. They're in that group of, 501c4 charities that don't have to disclose their membership. A lot of environmental groups, the NRA, and talk about a group that has a lot of clout. The NRA has unbelievable clout.
Do you know that I got an A rating from the NRA when I ran for public office?
Did you really?
Yes, yes. And you kind of wonder
how did they not discover that you were a flaming liberal and would have banned everything from water pistols up?
Well, I had a gentleman that worked with us, if you remember.
I do.
Remember Jim?
A fine gentleman.
We won't give Jim's last name.
A lifetime NRA member.
A lifetime, and my brother was a lifetime NRA guy. And they just cornered the local NRA guy at one of these political rallies and told him that I was just like they were. I didn't overhear it. I would have said that is an absolute.
Those guys, we worked with these gentlemen. They were our colleagues, and they were gun enthusiasts.
Yes, they were.
Now, they're the best kind of gun enthusiasts because they were careful. They practiced gun safety. They wouldn't drink and shoot guns or anything like that. Their guns were always carefully stored. Never felt any threat from those guys. But I used to tell Jim that the NRA, you don't want to join the NRA because then if the government ever does want to seize all the weapons, they'll have the list. You know, and he didn't like that. And I said, there is no legitimate threat to your Second Amendment rights. I had to call him up and apologize. After Newtown, when in New York they were going to limit magazines to 7 rounds, and they're doing all this stuff that really does, I think, infringe on legitimate gun rights, and I think violates the spirit of the Second Amendment as expressed in the Heller case.
You know, you remind me a little bit of Rush Limbaugh, because when he gives a history, his history's always that he was moderate, but then something happened that caused him to have his current position.
Well, that's
what
right.
you're saying.
You
were a moderate in the middle kind of guy.
I really
you're way out on the right.
had no idea that there was any threat to legitimate. I thought the NRA wants to have cop killer bullets. You know, the policemen didn't want that, but the NRA wanted it. And
they still do.
If you're a hunter so you want to have home defense or you want to be a sportsman and shoot at targets, you're going to be fine. That's not true anymore. There is a legitimate threat. And in some states, my family is in New Jersey, and you can buy a gun, but first you have to get a certain kind of an identity card before they'll even let you handle a gun or buy ammunition. You have to go through extra steps.
And you're seeing that limitation of any nut in the world being able to go get a gun.
No. How about this?
Okay.
Even people who, we have a good argument, we're not nutty. We've never been committed. Well, there's that one time. No, you know, if you look at us on paper, we don't violate the laws. We're pretty safe people. We're not felons or anything. And in some states, you couldn't have a normal Glock 17, which carries 17 rounds. You couldn't have it. California has to be limited to 10 rounds, and your magazines have to be limited to 10 rounds.
It does seem to me
it makes no sense to me.
An arbitrary kind of limitation, and what
it's
is
totally
that
illogical.
It is illogical.
First of all, the people who are going to stick you up or kick your door down, they're not going to be real careful about having 10-round magazines. They're already violating the law. But you, as a law-abiding citizen, so you're going to come down in your pajamas. You're not going to have your belt on like the cops with extra magazines. You're going to have your gun in your hand with 10 rounds. Well, you're kind of nervous. You're going to miss a couple of times. Then they're going to be a few perps, and you're going to run out of ammunition. They won't.
Yeah.
There's no point.
Has that ever actually happened?
Absolutely.
People run.
So you don't read the American Rifleman like I do. So when this all came up, like a lot of people in this country, I went out and bought more guns and started shooting.
Okay, but people actually have run out after 10 shots in the middle of a home invasion. Is that right?
I can't cite any. Well, let me just turn it around.
I know that's possible.
If in Pensacola, you read the paper like I do.
Yes.
You read about home invasions in the city of Pensacola.
I agree.
People kick your door down and come in and they'll kill you or steal from you.
Any person should have the right to have a firearm in their home to protect their family.
If you had
We're in agreement on
most of these 9mm firearms, the Beretta, that's that military spec, the Glock, which is a very standard weapon. Why would you artificially limit the number of rounds you would have in a magazine?
It's hard.
These are not magazines that stick way out. They're the normal magazines that stick into the
It seems arbitrary. It seems arbitrary.
Seems.
Somebody sent me, by the way, official NRA stickers. You know where mine are?
Somewhere in your bathroom.
Exactly.
Well, that's all right.
They are. You know, I've got one on the shower.
Some of your visitors might be inspired to join the NRA.
At my office. At the office, I have one on we have a shower at the office. I have one on the shower, and I have one on the inside of the toilet seat. So just so people will remember the significance of this organization and its great contribution to the politicians. To the country.
I think we now need the NRA.
We do?
We do.
It's like saying you need a root canal. I mean, maybe you do, but it surely is
Well,
awful to think about.
if you believe in Second Amendment rights, there are politicians who would limit them severely.
Don't you think they're a little on the nutty side, though? Really?
The NRA?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe they're a little
Just
bit extreme.
a tad.
Extremism in defense of liberty is no vice. It's Barry Goldwater.
Okay.
Really? You know what they did in New York, Governor Cuomo? That 10 rounds was too many for you. 7. So somebody pointed out, Governor, there are no 7-round magazines. Nobody even makes 7-round magazines. He said, well, you can use a 10-round magazine, but you can't load it all the way up. Even at a firing range. That's the law in New York.
Is it?
Stupid.
Yeah,
It's just, we have to do something. Well, you don't have to do just anything. Don't run around and bang your head into the wall. Do something if it makes sense.
Do you think that the price we pay for the Second Amendment rights is that we are going to experience mall shootings and hospital shootings and Pizza Hut shootings, and not Pizza Hut, but Pizza Place shootings? We're just going to experience as a society, and we're just going to have to get used to it.
There is an argument for that. I mean, if we had the kind of society like they have in some countries, where you can't own a gun, you can't buy a gun, you can't ever have a gun, nobody but the police will have a gun, then there would probably be fewer of these mass killings. But that's not our society and never will be. There are so many guns in this country, people who want to get them are going to get them. You know, these mass shootings are a tiny percentage. I mean, they're terrible. The Newtown, the children, it brought tears to my eyes every time I heard it.
Right.
And that was a terrible tragedy. That guy was a nut, and all the things they would have proposed wouldn't have made the slightest bit of difference.
That was what was so discouraging to me, was as you read about it, there was no place where the system failed. His mother had these legitimately.
His mother legitimately
in her home,
had them.
And he seemed otherwise, other than just being a little abnormal, seemed to be fine. That was discouraging, because what you'd like to see is a glaring defect in the process where, oh, if we just would have done this.
Or if we just had these magazine limitations. And you know what appeals to me? You're going to think it's crazy. The antidote for a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun.
Oh, that is crazy.
And I think, what if you had
In a public place, everybody's going to be shooting at everybody, right?
Well, do you have policemen in schools?
In some schools.
Yes, you do. You have a lot of policemen in schools.
Well,
in our high schools, we have a resource officer, I think, in every high school, and 2 at Pensacola High School.
Well, they're talking about putting police officers in schools across
Right.
the board. But I mean,
now wait a minute.
But you have a trained person, though. You have someone trained and using
okay. And do these policemen have pistols with bullets in them?
I would assume, yeah.
They do.
Sure.
I'm telling you for a fact they do.
Okay.
And the reason we feel safe with them, the reason we don't feel any threat from them, is they're trained, and they're cleared, and they're checked out. Well, why not give that same level of training to a civilian? You're not going to just say, well, any assistant principal, go ahead and grab a gun and walk around armed. You have to go through the same background checks, the same training, maybe more rigorous training as the police.
In the school?
Yes.
All right, let's just leave the school.
What if an assistant principal had his Glock and he said, this nut is shooting children?
Okay.
Summary judgment.
That sounds like a good idea, but I want to go to one other component of this. Would you feel comfortable going to a local restaurant where everybody was armed? I mean, every customer. You didn't know anything about these people. You don't know anything about their background or training. Yeah. Would you feel comfortable sitting down in that restaurant? People are drinking alcohol. Yeah. Some people are getting angry like they're Republicans. They get upset about things. They get very upset about things. And then all of a sudden, everybody's shooting everybody. Yeah. Is that where we're going?
I don't think so. I mean, in the states that allow open carry, has that caused a lot of crime? It has not.
Well, I'm not.
Open carry. You can walk around in Arizona, I think it is, with a pistol on your head.
Well, those people are a little wacky out there anyway, but I haven't seen any.
Well, in Florida, you don't know it, but there are loads of people walking around carrying concealed weapons. We've issued loads of concealed carry permits. I don't mind there being some standard. I mean, background checks are good. To carry a concealed weapon, you have to show some, it ain't much. But you have to show some competence.
The availability of firearms is the problem. They're every place.
They are.
They're every place. So why don't we have metal detectors at malls and at restaurants? I think we're going there. I think the big, well-established restaurants, the malls, other places where you have so many people that they're going to start searching bags and
I think
going through metal
business
detectors.
ought to be able to establish rules. If you want to shop here or you want to eat here, you have to go through the metal detector. If you don't want to do it, there's another restaurant down the street.
I think it's coming.
And that's where, you know, the NRA says, well, your employer can't keep your locked gun out of your car. I don't know. The employer should. It's a conflict. The employer should be able to set rules for its employees on its property.
On its property. I think that's right.
On the employer's property. This is our rule. No guns.
We are going to come up. When we come back, we're going to take a break here in just a minute. And we're going to talk about some very interesting things. Last week, Mr. Rankin suggested that if the president would just pony up to offering natural gas to Ukraine, that would have some.
No, I thought he ought to stand up and say, not mention Ukraine, but just say we are going to expedite the permits for turning natural gas into liquefied natural gas, and any country that's our ally, we'll sell it to them, including Ukraine, and especially where they really need it, in Europe. I think that's a good idea, and I think and I know the counter-argument is, well, we need it here. Well, the free market ought to control that, not politicians deciding who gets what.
Have you just finished the argument for and against, concluded it, and then you won? I didn't get to say anything.
Well, so you can move on to another topic now. I just thought.
Well, when we come back, we actually will hear another side to this natural gas and what's going on in this country, which is really fantastic, actually, what's going on in this country. We'll be back after this short announcement.
For over 30 years, we've had the privilege to live and work in this great community. Kerrigan, Estes, Rankin, McLeod, and Thompson, representing accident victims across Northwest Florida.
Oh la la, oh la la, quick is la.
Ladysmith Black Mambazo in concert, March 21st at the Maddie Kelly Art Center. Tickets and details are at wuwf.org.
Oh la la, quick.
Okay, we're back. Within Reason. Bob Kerrigan and Bill Rankin. Thank you for watching, and it'll be on the screen from time to time. You may email us or leave a voicemail message or whatever you'd like to do about the things that you'd like to.
I apologize to Mr. Kerrigan. I stomped all over his issue before he even had a chance to introduce it.
Yeah.
But this is going to be hard for me. I'm going to sit here and listen respectfully while you, because Bob's done some research and has some good stuff.
I don't know if it's, I just have another side of things. I have the usual liberal sources, Politico magazine, the New York Times, and some other things. But I'm going to tell you some things I think are going to be surprising to you, but that you'll be happy to know about.
Oh, good.
Okay? And that is that Obama, give you the bottom line, is bucking the Sierra Club, the conservationists, the liberal establishment, and is issuing, and the Obama administration is expediting approval for the building of these liquid natural gas.
You think he watched the show? It's possible.
I think when you say things, shit happens.
Well,
okay?
you know what? Then I am a relentless critic of President Obama.
Yeah.
I applaud that move. I think that shows some courage because that's his base.
Yeah.
Those are the people who vote for Democrats,
Yeah.
and that's good public policy and shows some courage. Good for him.
Okay, well, we'll cover that in a little bit more detail. Here's the article. It says, "Don't send America's natural gas to Ukraine." And here's just some of the points that are coming out of this Politico magazine article. And you can access this by going to politico.com, Politico.com. And so I'll just read some of the beginning of this. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has given a boost to those calling for the United States to expedite natural gas export to help allies overseas. In this thinking, American gas exports in the form of liquefied natural gas, or LNG, are not only a boon to the domestic economy, but also a potent geopolitical tool to be wielded against the Kremlin, which is pretty much what you said last week.
Yes.
Okay. Now he says, in response to that, the author does, this is by Gal, G-A-L-L-U-F-T, "Never mind that the United States won't have its first LNG export terminal in operation until late 2015 at the very earliest."
Good point.
Okay, that all of its approved gas exports are already committed to long-term contracts. We're already exporting a lot of natural gas, and that the Ukraine does not even have a single terminal for receiving LNG. So if we got it there, they couldn't use it. Okay, I know you have some comments, but just wait. There's more here, okay? And you have a chance.
And you've actually been to Ukraine.
I actually have been to Ukraine, but I haven't seen the failure to build these LNG terminals. But
I think it's probably safe to assume they don't have them because they've been getting their natural gas through pipelines
from Russia,
from the Russian Federation.
Which leads this to also an interesting point. There is a map. People can Google this, and I'll show Bill. Won't go on the air with it. I'll find it here in a second. But it shows the pipelines going through Ukraine. Holy smokes, I've never seen so many pipelines in my life. There are pipelines all over Ukraine going to Poland and Moldova. And
Germany imports a lot of natural gas from Russia. A lot of their energy comes from Russia, comes through Ukraine.
Yeah, and as I say, I'll find that map, Bill, in just a second, which is really interesting. I wish to heck I could put my finger right on this map, which I can't seem to do right this second. But anyway, let's go back to this article. It says, ever since the beginning of the shale gas revolution, which is in the rocks, right, which kicked off in 2005, the U.S. Department of Energy has approved 6 LNG export terminals with a combined export capacity of 8.5 billion cubic feet a day, and more projects are in the works. And this is being head up by Obama, okay? It says, And this is one of the great consumers of natural gas, as you know, are these power companies.
Absolutely.
And we're getting rid of coal, thank goodness, and we're getting natural gas. And
well,
so
the way we got rid of coal is pretty ugly, really. But
most of America's newly cheap gas finds its way to the electricity sector. This is what I thought was very interesting, where it displaces coal as a fuel source. Coal's share of total electricity generation declined from 51% 10 years ago to 40% today. That percentage will continue to drop as the Obama administration persists in its effective ban on new coal-fired power plants. The shift from coal to gas has brought a 10% decline in U.S. greenhouse gas emissions from power plants since 2010, according to the EPA. Okay? Now, the reason for this economic situation is that natural gas has landed in the power sector, not necessarily because electricity is the most economic use of the commodity, but because our grid and electric appliances are indifferent about the source of energy. Bill's a physics major and a scientist, and this is all second nature to him, but about the source of our energy that goes into making the electrons they use. For a light bulb or a coffee machine, electrons made from coal, gas, or nuclear or solar are all the same. Right. Okay,
whatever spins the turbine doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Cars are a different story. They do care what the source of energy is that goes into their tank, and that's one of the biggest problems, according to this article, which I thought was quite interesting, is that we don't have cars able to use our best source of energy right now. We don't. Now, the mayor, do you know, converted the city trucks and things to natural gas. He was way ahead of this. They're building natural gas
you can do that
stations.
If these vehicles stay within the city, then you have one refueling place. You know, unlike your car, you may want to drive to Tallahassee or Jacksonville, and you'll run out of natural gas.
After spiking in the last decade, natural gas prices in the United States have hovered between $3 and $4 per million BTUs. That is down from a high of $12 before the recession and a fraction of what it costs in Asia and Europe. That price differential is one of the reasons exports are so appealing for domestic energy companies. Now, on the other hand, cheap domestic supplies means companies like Dow Chemical, one of the biggest private customers of natural gas in the country, and other chemical countries are now paying much less than their foreign competitors for the raw material they turn into products, which makes us highly competitive in what we're making, okay? It could also bring back jobs to the United States as manufacturers that use natural gas for energy benefits.
U.S. manufacturing is coming back for some of these reasons.
Some of those reasons. So far, the Obama administration has granted permits to 3 terminal projects, 2 in Louisiana and 1 in Texas, and appears to be on a gradual path to approve a handful more over the next several years to avoid risking the natural gas price increase or spike that some people are fearing. I just say that on that point, I think you were kind of hard on Obama, that he didn't just make a public stand that we're going to make natural gas available to Ukraine, because it's not practical to make it available
I
to
didn't
Ukraine.
know. I knew that exports had to be approved to each country.
They do.
And they weren't approved to all countries. I didn't know what you said. I don't understand why we ought to be protectionists about this. I think I just like the way the free market works. It's the only thing that works, because the opposite of the free market, the only alternative to the free market, is coercion.
I agree, but
you've got something you want to sell. They want it bad in Europe, and the government says, no, you can't do it.
But what if it guts domestic manufacturing in the United States, and we could prove it absolutely? Isn't that a legitimate role of government to say, whoa, just a second now, you energy companies, you're going to make a ton of money exporting a resource that's in our ground and our soil. You're going to make a ton of money doing it. We're proud of you. It's the free enterprise system. Oh, and by the way, screw all the companies in the United States that need this natural gas for domestic production and for manufacturing. Isn't that a legitimate role of government?
It certainly could. No, not protectionism. No, it certainly would. It would raise the price.
It's control of the resource, though, for the benefit of the citizens of the country. I think the government has a legitimate.
The control of the resource ought to be in the hands of whoever owns it. That's what works.
All right, let me read another. This is from the New York Times. U.S. approves expanded gas exports. The Obama administration on Friday, and I've forgotten, I get the date of this, it's really very, well, this is older. This is May 18th, sorry, 2013. The Obama administration on Friday cleared the way for broader natural gas exports by approving $10 billion facility in Texas. You know, that's how much it costs to build these darn things. It's very expensive.
Yeah. And I wonder what you have to do to take gas and make it liquid.
Make it liquid. It must be expensive.
I'm sure it has to be at a high pressure, which is a problem with mobile. You know, if you're carrying around...
the transportation of it is very difficult because it has to be under the same pressure, right? All right, in giving the project known as Freeport LNG the green light, the Department of Energy signaled that it found the prospective benefits from exporting energy outweigh concerns about possible downsides for the U.S. economy. Proponents of greater exports, including the oil and gas industry, say that exporting inexpensive natural gas will help the U.S. trade balance and help advance the adoption of clean-burning fuels around the world. These are good arguments, right?
And there are geopolitical reasons.
Yes, exactly.
You want every country in the world to be really dependent on us. That'd be pretty nice.
Excellent point.
I mean, it was just the opposite. We had to kiss up to Saudi Arabia because they had all the oil.
With what's happening with fracking, and they say since 2005, this thing has exploded in this country. We're in a unique position.
And they're talking about, not the government, private companies are talking about, if you build, you don't have to have a natural gas station on every corner like your gas station. I mean, for these 18-wheelers that go over the road, you space them 150 miles apart on interstates, on the major interstates, and it's going to be cost-effective.
It could work. And the truck conversion is more realistic than cars.
It's better for trucks than cars.
Opponents counter that exports may cause domestic prices to rise, hurting consumers and some industries, such as chemicals, that have benefited from cheap natural gas. Some environmentalists oppose exports for a different reason, saying the U.S. shouldn't encourage more fossil fuel production. But that pretty much summarizes the debate, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, that's always the protectionism argument. It's gonna make these things more expensive for us. Or if we allow shoes made from Asia, then the main shoe industry is going to go under. And that's kind of an appealing argument. But the only thing that works is free trade.
All right. The combination of hydraulic fracturing and horizontal drilling has unleashed a natural gas bonanza that has made the U.S. the world's largest natural gas producer. Pretty cool, isn't it?
Great, yeah.
President Barack Obama, who you have not spoken highly of on some issues.
I don't think highly of President Obama.
But let me finish the quote. President Barack Obama has welcomed the boom, and his administration showed in Friday's decision it was ready to buck environmental groups in order to spur further production. What do you think about that? An apology should be forthcoming.
I think so. That's a surprise to me.
Is it?
And yeah.
Well, that's
because I thought as just a matter of course, he just genuflected to the environmentalists because they're a big source of Democratic votes and Democratic campaign contributions.
My respect for you has skyrocketed with that mea culpa.
It's good to know.
Because I didn't know that really. I was hoping.
Well, I thought the guy was just doing whatever the environmentalists wanted, like that Keystone nonsense where they keep delaying it and delaying it.
Well, I think in time, here's a map.
This is great. Oh, they're all over Ukraine.
They're all over Ukraine.
Yeah.
And one of the big points about this whole transportation of petroleum and natural gas and other fuel sources, I guess, is that Russia grosses something like $100 million a day sending this stuff to Europe, okay? I mean, so Russia can't just say, well, we're going to free... Well, they did it to Moldova one time. They said, oh, well, let's see how you handle...
Well, they've done it to Ukraine.
Yeah, let's see how you handle this winter.
They turned off the tap.
Yeah, and
how about... But Bob has a map with like veins
I don't know if
going around.
You can't zoom in on that, I don't think, can you? No, she can. All right. But you can see, hopefully you can see that. There's all kinds of lines.
But
all those lines are gas lines.
What this suggests then, you find some place on the water, build a liquid natural gas terminal, and use those pipelines to send it all over the country. That's already in place. Or to send it out of the country, to Germany or whoever else wants to buy it.
Well, Ukraine is going to have to become more independent. They're in a terrible position.
They made some terrible decisions.
Well, they're in a terrible position.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about being between a rock and a hard place. You know,
Absolutely.
the country is, and now the fight, you know, in Ukraine for other reasons. Okay, now let me go on to another national subject. We leave the energy. We'll call that a draw. Okay, on the natural gas. Or do you kind of still feel like you were the victor in that debate?
No, I don't see it in those terms.
Okay, good.
I just enjoy
right, I know that.
the debate. You know?
Good. All right, listen to this. Now, this is going to be very alarming to Bill because he has a certain sense of the bailouts and the government and everything. It's not very pretty, as you probably know. So I'm going to read you this from Reuters. U.S. government-owned mortgage financiers Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac could send about $179.2 billion in profits to taxpayers over the next 10 years if the terms of their bailout remain intact. The White House Budget Office announced this. The amount is more than triple the estimated 10-year payments calculated last year in the White House budget proposal, driven by the company's increased profitability. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have operated under federal conservatorship since 2008, when regulators agreed to inject capital into companies to keep them afloat. They received $187.5 billion in taxpayer funds, but they have returned to profitability, and by the end of March, they will have paid, you ready for this? $202 billion in dividends to the U.S. Treasury. No one expected them to become profitable so quickly, but when home prices surged in 2012, they were able to recover more money than expected on these soured loans. Profit projections come in an addendum to President Barack Obama's fiscal 2015 budget proposal. In a budget proposal last year, the administration estimated that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac would send the Treasury only $51 billion through 2023. Under a 2012 revamp of their bailout terms, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac send a majority of their profits to the Treasury as dividends, and they are unable to repurchase the controlling share the government took when it bailed them out. Previously, they were required to pay only a 10% dividend.
There's a lot of pushback on that. Do you think, as a general proposition, that the government ought to be in the home mortgage business?
No, I don't think so.
Well, that's what they are.
Well, they are, and the way it's structured right now, they're in it. I agree. I don't understand
Get out of it.
about the high finances. We need to get Rick Harper to come on and visit with us about, okay, what are the options? What is the way to get out of it, conveniently to get out of it? You can't just say, okay, it's going to go to the free market. I mean, it's too embedded now. I mean, to just make
there's a way to unwind it.
Well, I think
Britain did it under Thatcher. They unwound all of these government things. Yeah. I think the basic idea is we want to sponsor home ownership. There's a feeling that if a person owns their own home, it leads to more stable communities, that it's really good all around, and especially among lower income people.
I agree.
And now the politics get involved, you know?
Well, they got whapped out of shit.
But there's no reason we ought to give special breaks to people who own their homes instead of renting. I don't see why we ought to have a home mortgage interest deduction when we don't have a rent interest deduction or income tax deduction. The government ought to just stay out of it.
Well, if they got
it's
out
part
of
of the
that,
problem in the first place.
It'd be a lot of money for the Treasury. You drop that home mortgage deduction.
Exactly.
Woo.
Now it needs to unwind.
Yeah.
Not just, you know, there are people who count on it. There are people who bought their homes because they're going to get a tax break. So what you say is, well, if your home is worth $1 million or you're, you know, then you just gradually unwind it so people don't get killed by it.
Well,
but there is no good policy reason. And Rick Harper said this. Yeah. There's no good policy reason that we ought to give people a home mortgage interest deduction.
Well, it does seem irrational when you consider people who rent their homes don't get any benefit.
They don't get anything.
And I'm not so sure encouraging.
Probably poor people, by and large, are more likely to be renters, wouldn't you think?
More likely than not to be renters, yeah. I think you're right. All right, we're going to take a short break here, and when we come back, we're going to talk about some local issues that I think you'll find interesting, and we may touch on one or two other points. So stay with us. We'll be back here in just a minute.
For over 30 years, we've had the privilege to live and work in this great community. Kerrigan, Estes, Rankin, McLeod, and Thompson, representing accident victims across Northwest Florida.
Oh la la, oh la la, quick is la.
Ladysmith Black Mambazo in concert, March 21st at the Maddie Kelly Arts Center. Tickets and details are at WUWF.org.
Oh la la, quick.
Okay, we're back, and the ball is being tossed into Mr. Rankin's court for a few minutes, and then we're going to go to local issues.
Okay.
You're up.
This is, I listen to NPR in the morning. It's all well done, but they've got a way of looking at things that's distinctly liberal, I think. And they very often leave out the other side of the story.
You think it's probably because they focus primarily on the truth?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, it isn't.
It's not. Okay.
No. If they're, you know, they often leave one side of the argument out completely.
Well, I mean,
like, for example, here's a quick example. This isn't on my list, and I cannot pronounce this gentleman's name. He was Obama's nominee for the head of the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department. And it sounds like an African name, but I don't know his name. It's been all over the news.
Yeah. I can't. I don't know.
And the way it was presented on NPR is, well, he's a lawyer, a pretty accomplished lawyer, and he defended some guy who was accused of murdering a cop, so the cops don't like him. And therefore they stopped his appointment.
I remember that criticism that he was involved in the defense of a person that was involved with law enforcement. I do remember some of it, and I can't call the guy's name. I wish I could. Tell me
the reason I can't, it's just,
what
I
part
had
of that's
it written
not
down.
true? What part of that's not true?
The part of it that's not true is, as Paul Harvey would say, the rest of the story.
Give it to me.
Lawyers, and they keep saying, well, lawyers should not be judged by the crimes of their clients. Of course not. You've represented people accused of murder, all kinds of terrible crimes.
Terrible people, including politicians. But
yes,
go ahead. Yeah.
And they are entitled to a defense. They're entitled to one person who knows the law to help them, to be on their side, to not divulge their secrets. And that's our system, and it's a good system.
Right.
And there are lots of high-flying lawyers who've represented pro bono all kinds of criminals and people accused of crime.
And you've done the very same thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have.
Yeah.
Not because we like murderers, or not because we think these people are innocent, but they need a defense.
They did.
They need to be able to forward their side of the story. Maybe it's not first-degree murder. Maybe they have some reason it's second-degree murder.
I agree with
all of that. And that's what goes on.
I agree with all of
that.
that.
The rest of the story is what the organized police were so upset about. It's not that the lawyer represented a guy accused of murder. It's that he organized this whole movement to brand the whole system racist. Now, this guy, they had him cold. He confessed to it. And they just went around and branded the whole system as racist and terrible, and the country's just all racist. That's what they objected to. You don't hear that in NPR. You just start, well, he represented, it's true. He was a part of a team that represented, it's half true. It's not that the police are just down on everybody who represents murderers. You know that's not true.
It's not true. It's not true.
Here's another thing.
If that happened that way, that's a valid
Well, there
point.
is another side to the story. Now, does it counterbalance? Who knows?
No, but you need to tell the whole story.
Right.
And what you're saying, I agree.
They
totally
made the
agree.
police look like fools.
I agree.
They're opposing the guy because he represented a murder. Well,
I agree. That wasn't the reason.
That's wrong. That wasn't the reason.
I'm going to check into that, but go ahead.
You'll find that I'm right as usual. Now, this is an NPR story, and this is part of the continuing thing about how Obamacare is really pretty good and it's helping people. And we've talked about this, about the people, they call it job lock. People who are keeping jobs just because they need the health insurance, and now with Obamacare, they can get something.
And your view is that they should stay in that job and be happy. Because they're getting health coverage out of it, and by golly, that's...
Well, I'm just going to tell you the rest of it and then ask you a couple of questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Because I keep coming up with... I'm not the world's greatest press examiner. You're much better at it than I am. But I keep coming up with questions to ask these people, you know? Like the lady who she said, I can't feed my 6 children. And because I have no education, no job, no husband, no nothing, and I'm having trouble feeding my 6 children. And I want to ask, after kid number 3, Did it dawn on you that maybe you couldn't
Oh,
afford
that's a
these
classic. Okay, I got it.
All right, forget that.
They're having too many kids. I know. Go ahead.
Should you have kids you can't afford to raise?
Probably not a good idea.
Right, exactly.
That's why, you see, we should have obligatory birth control that you're opposed to.
Well,
how about that point?
If we had a policy of handing out birth control to anybody who wanted it, that would be okay. My objection is something different.
Your objection is that it's mandatory in the health policy, and you say it shouldn't
be. That it's forced to be in these policies.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be. It's done for political reasons, and it's forced down everybody's throat. That's my objection to Obamacare.
You don't think I made a point on my little...
Yes, you do. You got a point.
All right, good. All right, so what's your...
I'm here.
Where are we going now?
So here, a gentleman comes on to illustrate the story, because they have personal stories.
Right.
And this gentleman said, you know, I've wanted to retire, but I had to keep this job because I needed health insurance. I really wanted to retire for a while. And now, with Obamacare, I get a subsidy, and my health insurance is cheaper, so now I can retire. He was 52 years old. Now, what questions would you want to ask this gentleman?
What kind of work have you been doing?
Well, is there
Because maybe at 52 he should retire.
Any moral dimension to having somebody else pick up the tab for your health care so you can retire at age 52?
Well, see, the idea is it's the government that's picking it
up.
Right,
it's the government.
Yeah.
I remember hearing, this was on one of those COA call-in shows, I don't think the people ought to pay for it, I think the government ought to pay for it. It's the way people think, the government has a lot of money, let them pay for it. They get it from us.
So they didn't tell what this gentleman
But nobody said to this gentleman.
The first question you would ask is...
Do you consider yourself
a
self-reliant, independent person?
But I would ask him first, what are you retiring from?
Yeah.
What if he was in
Is this a hazardous job?
Yeah. What if he was a police officer that was escorting, terrorists and his life had been threatened?
Well, if he was a police officer, he probably could retire at 52 because they retire young.
Probably, but your point is very valid. It's like, wait just a second. What right do you think you have to retire at somebody else's expense?
That's it. What they never point out is, well, somebody else is paying for your health care when you have apparently the ability to work and pay for your own health care.
1 point for Mr. Rankin.
Okay.
Excellent point. The first one was
the only mark on the sheet. Okay.
That first one was not as good. But.
We've talked about all the changes to Obamacare kind of done by executive fiat, and some right-winger counted up like 40 of them. I don't know if that's accurate.
There's one in the paper today. Yeah.
They keep changing.
They do. They keep changing. I think there's a real problem with executive power. I think it's excessive. And we've got a weak Congress that won't do anything about it.
They should.
And they can confront him. They should have confronted Bush. They should have confronted anybody that presses this executive power. And it's out of control. It's being run as an executive branch of government with no checks or balances by the Congress. If you have
just one branch of government, that's the definition of tyranny. Nobody checks whatever you want to do.
I totally agree.
And somebody made, this isn't my quote, I wish it were. Obamacare isn't actually a law. It's just whatever Obama feels like on that day.
Well, that's probably not the...
Well, here's the point I'm trying to... The Obama administration, I don't think it was President Obama himself, probably his spokesman, came out and said, the recent decision to extend the business mandate until way beyond the elections had nothing to do with politics. Do you believe that?
Of course.
Okay. Now, here's where I'll disprove it.
Okay.
When they came out with a press release which said that in consultation, now Congress didn't have anything to do, but they consulted with some Democratic congressional people and mentioned them by name. And it was all the people who were under threat. Mary Landrieu, and it kind of put them in there as helping a fix for Obamacare. And then they come out and say, well, it had nothing to do with politics. You just happened to pick these people because they were friendly, and it had nothing to do with their races that you were trying to help them with. You can't believe what any politician says.
No, I agree with that.
Not Republicans, not Democrats, only libertarians.
Well, I don't agree with the latter point, but I do agree with the former point. Now, I want to ask you a couple questions before you go on, because I don't want to run out of time.
Right. And you want to do local stuff. So I'm finished with the questions for now.
Before I get to local stuff, I want to ask you this question, because you pretty well bashed food stamps, I think, the last time we talked about it in one form or another. You had some legitimate concerns about it. But I pointed out before we went on the show, and I'm going to ask you a few other things. Why can't people buy toilet paper with food stamps?
I don't know.
Why can't they buy toothpaste?
I don't know. I mean, maybe that's a legitimate use of food stamps.
Why can't they buy a toothbrush?
My complaint.
A caller, by the way, gave us this information. Went on the internet and I did a little research. Here's the point: no paper products of any kind. You can only buy what you can eat or seeds that you can grow and produce food. And you can't get alcohol and tobacco and all that.
Well, nobody's going to put up with alcohol and tobacco.
But the point you made is absolutely right about the soft drink industry. You know, I picked up a can the other day, a drink can, because I don't know why I'm starting to look at labels. My age, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference. But anyway, I'm picking up a look at this can. 32 grams of sugar and a little drink can.
As my wife so often reminds me, that's a lot of sugar.
That is well, I think it's 6 grams per teaspoon or something. I mean, that is just like mostly sugar. Okay, and I was shocked.
The weight of medical evidence is sugar in those high levels is bad for you at whatever age you are.
And so we have what was the figure you gave us? $4 billion, right? That is the effect of the soft drink industry with food stamps.
$4 billion of the $80 billion. I think I got that right. That is spent on the food stamp program goes to soft drinks. Now, maybe they're sugar-free soft drinks.
But I don't know. I think the food sellers are in cahoots because these are high-profit items too.
Yeah.
So everybody's getting money off the government.
What does it cost to make a can of Coke?
Right.
Not much.
So everybody's getting money off the government. So that's one. We talked about natural gas. We talked about that.
If the government decided to let them have, I think the paper lobby just isn't doing their job, because otherwise you'd be able to buy toilet paper, because that's not the kind of thing that's going to offend people.
Well, no paper products are allowed. I mean, nothing. You can't buy, whatever women might need, and toilet papers and other. You can't buy any of that. Okay, not with food stamps. Which I just thought was alarming, that you could buy soft drinks, but you can't get those products for your family.
Everybody has to have some other source of income, so it's a matter of balancing it out.
All right, so let's go to these.
But the program has gone nuts, and the Obama administration some of the people in the administration are happy when they increase the participation in the program.
I know. I heard
these are more and more freebies. It's gone nuts.
All right, I have this is on local issues, because I'm so tired of hearing this, and we waited too long to get into this. Maybe next week we'll start with the local issues. But here's something that really bothers me, and that is this: with 99.999% of the voters are home with their families when the city council is meeting or the county commission is meeting. Okay? And during the day, people are working. Well, not everybody's working. Here's what's going on. The people who want from government, who've got these great big hands that stick into the cash register up to their elbows, they're in the county commissioner's offices having these private meetings and working the halls, same way with the city council. Now, when they work the halls or they work the city council or whatever they do individually, they do it quietly. No one knows they're there. The city council people, they don't open their mouth about who contacted them. They don't disclose what was talked about. They don't discuss the benefits that this person that came and talked to them. And this is all contrary to the intent of an open discussion of the public's business, where the public knows what's going on. Well, here's my proposal, okay? That every elected official, I don't care who you are, you have to report in some form, fashion, who contacted you and what they contacted you about. Because what happened in the city council business, for example, where the person doing the schmoozing up, going from council person to council person, has some real exposure that another council person knows about, but it's not discussed because they don't know what was said, because they can't overhear what this person that's the mover and shaker is doing between council people. I know there's another side to this, and Bill and I have talked about it before we went on the air, but I just think it's disgusting.
How much of a burden would it be to log every conversation?
You know what it'd do? It would discourage all of this. You want to say something to an elected official, write them a letter. Sign your name to it. All this secretive stuff that was behind all of this private meetings about the airport stuff. Yeah, come on, fess up. Come up. Tell us what you're saying to these elected officials so we can respond to it, so we can know. That would be my
Should advocates for the homeless be able to go have a meeting with a city council?
No, not individually. Nobody. You have something to do with government business, you should have the courage and the integrity to do it where we all know what you're doing. working the halls. Oh, so-and-so was up there working the halls today.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting you have that much time. You're working the halls while the taxpayers are working, generating income.
But generally, we have a right to contact our elected officials. Now, for
Write
some
them a
people
letter.
it's easy, and for some people it's not.
If you don't want to write them a letter and you want to talk to them, corner them at church, which was going on in the last vote, corner them at the civic club meeting, come right back, dictate a memo, and make it a public record. Today at the civic club meeting, while I was trying to eat my salad, the guy who wants $1 million from us was bumping me right and left. Then go ahead and announce that so we know what happened. It bothers me.
It sounds like a decent idea. I just wonder if you're at lunch with somebody and something kind of comes up.
Oh, it's casual. Oh, they're great at casual.
And then, so you got to record everything.
I think you just have to note when you are contacted about something for which you are going to vote that involves my money.
Just the topic and the individual.
You got to tell us who it is. The work in the halls people need to come out of the closet, okay, and tell us who you are and what you're doing and why you're working these halls, why you're working these city council people privately. They don't show up sometimes. You don't even know who they are. It's like all of a sudden, you've seen it happen over and over again. There's a vote. There's a vote.
Yeah.
Nobody discussed
the cake's
anything.
been baked already.
Yeah, well, what happened? Well, we don't know. We're not entitled to know. It's our money that these city council people and the county commissioners are spending, and they need to have more transparency. That's my view about it.
It's probably worth discussing.
Yeah, it's worth
there may be
discussing.
some issues that need to remain private.
It may be. I think the issues that
What
need...
about, you go to the chairman of a council or commission and say, I just want to report to you because there's been some improper conduct between employees and city council.
think you could have a protocol
that ought to be private.
for reporting something that's going to disparage somebody or defame somebody, that you have a system for doing it in some reasonable way. I'm talking about trying to influence public officials to have them vote to give the person our money. It's our money. Let me tell you about these public officials, okay? In my humble opinion, they would never do this with their own money. They wouldn't do that. Are you kidding me? Do you think they give away their own money because so-and-so eats salad with you at the civic club? Or what are you talking about? No, they wouldn't give away their own money. They're giving away our money, okay? That's what I think is the problem here, is that we don't have public officials understanding their fiduciary duties. And that if someone comes to you and bumps you about getting some benefit for themselves, why do you keep that a secret from us? Why aren't you telling us?
And our local politicians are notorious for rewarding their buddies.
We've had a bad...
politicians do that generally.
They do it nationally.
The Obama administration has sent some totally unqualified ambassadors around because they gave a lot of money. Everybody does that.
That's been going on. Right. It's been going on for years. And I'd be interested in the public's response to this as to whether this could be something that might be possible to have more transparency so that this appearance that they're discussing this in the open when they've already got their mind made up based on information we don't know.
Yeah.
We can't respond to it.
And in an era when the internet opinion is kicking out actual news gathering by newspapers.
It is.
And it is, we are really kind of behind on investigative journalism. It's difficult. You got to go to these meetings, you got to look through, you make public records requests and figure everything out and then track people down and, oh, this is your brother-in-law. And nobody said that,
The newspaper industry, responding to the quarterly demands of Wall Street for earnings numbers, have eroded and abandoned their responsibilities for investigative
businesses
reporting.
can't exist without making a profit.
We're going to wrap it up. They tell us our time's out. We'll be back next week. Bill and Bob, Within Reason. Thank you very much for watching tonight. Good night.
Good night.